Hello, today we're going to show you how to install an HB Industries trigger kit into your CZ P10 style handgun. The first thing to do, remove your magazine and clear the firearm, make sure there's nothing in the chamber. Go ahead and cycle the slide a few times, make sure it's clear. At that point, go ahead and drop the striker and it's in a safe position, so now we can work on it. We are going to use a red trigger today just in hopes that it shows up a little better on camera. We also manufacture the same triggers in black and a tungsten color and orange. So at the time of the video, we do have other colors. We may do other colors in the future. But again, just for the kind of being on camera, we're hoping the red will show up better. Inside the trigger kit, there's a few different items. We'll look at them real quick. We've got our trigger itself and a dowel pin. The dowel pin's to help install the striker springs. Speaking of striker springs, we've got a striker spring chart that's going to help us identify the different springs. This way, if they get discolored or just dirty over time, we can go on geometry and not on colors or anything else. So on our chart, let's see if we can do this here without too much drama. We've got the factory spring on the far left, and this is our 3-pound striker spring in the middle. On the right, our 3.5-pound striker spring. The actual pull rate is going to vary based on your P10. For example, this is our factory spring. If we nominally measure 4.3 pounds, you can expect when you install the 3-pound striker spring that you're going to drop 1 pound and 4 ounces. If you have for like a 5-pound trigger, or if your factory trigger when you check the weight is 6 pounds, you're not going to end up with a 3-pound spring. You're going to again drop about 1 pound 4 ounces, and that's nominal. So the spring weights, just like an M&P or a Glock or another striker firearm, are not going to, the rate you get is not going to be exact to the rate of the spring. This is kind of just a metric that you can follow and maybe use it more proportionally rather than the exact weight that your spring might yield in your particular firearm. For this video, we're going to go ahead and install our 3-pound spring, which is kind of this middle guy. So we'll put aside our 3.5-pound striker spring, and I'll just go ahead and set our 3-pound spring up here. To install the striker spring, it's really easy. All we're going to do is remove the slide. So kind of pull the slide back maybe 1/4 inch, and pulling down on our takedown lever or plate, go ahead and push the slide forward. Set our frame aside, and all we need to do is remove the striker assembly. To do that, grab a flathead screwdriver and see if we can show it. Reach into this little pocket that's kind of in the right side of the striker as we're looking at it here, and pull the striker assembly forward or towards the muzzle. Kind of see it there. When we pull forward on it, that's going to release the pressure on our back plate, on our slide plate, and allow us to slide the slide plate down and out of the slide. So from this angle, kind of reach in, pull down, and release the pressure and push up on your slide plate. You can use 2 hands. Remove the slide plate, set it aside, and go ahead and work the striker assembly out of the slide. With the striker assembly removed, we can see the spring we're about to replace. The installation tool we kind of mentioned earlier is the white dowel. Let's remove the white dowel, and we're going to use it to back our firing pin or striker and kind of hold it in place while we compress our spring. So we'll show you that real quick. Go ahead and you can put it down on the table. We're just going to put our block right here, and pushing down on the striker spring, we will remove these 2 cups. They are just like a Glock striker actually. So it's like a half cup and the 2 halves show you here, make a complete seal around the firing pin. So be careful not to lose these. They can go, they're obviously under spring pressure, so they can go flying. So kind of keep them, keep an eye on them as you're removing them. To replace our striker spring, again, if we're not sure, just grab your chart again and kind of go by length. So as you maybe roll this across the chart, you can see that it's the 4.3 pound factory spring. So factory spring goes aside. We're going to install our 3 pound spring, use our backer dowel again, put it in the firing pin channel, drop the new spring on, and go ahead and, oopsie, kind of compress your new spring. It is easier to do without gloves on. The gloves kind of want to get caught, so it might be easier in your case without gloves. So with put the cups back on, retain the spring. And again, if you've done this before on a Glock or an M&P or similar striker fire pistol, you're going to kind of already know what to do. So new spring installed. Go ahead and put the striker assembly back into the slide. Drop it back in. And to reinstall the slide plate, it's going to be the same as before. So slide plate goes in. Use your screwdriver to compress the spring and drop the slide plate back into place. Release the tension on your striker assembly and just kind of verify that's in place. So if you want to check the function of the striker assembly on the frame, you can. Just grab your frame, reinstall the slide, and assuming the weapon's clear, go ahead and you can check the function of the striker assembly a couple times. You're looking for obviously reset and then proper function. So don't have to, but you can. So to replace the trigger, we're gonna again kind of take the slide off, so pull it back 1/4 inch down on the takedown plate, slide the slide assembly forward, and we're gonna set the slide to the side and work on our trigger. We're gonna replace it again with the red HB Industries Theta trigger. The first thing to do here is remove our slide plate. Be careful removing this because there is a small detent and a spring underneath it. They are under pressure and have been known to go missing if you're not careful. So kind of push down on the takedown plate and slide it out. You can slide it out either the left or the right side of the frame. In our case, we're going to kind of work it to the right side, and you can almost kind of see here, this is the angled portion of the takedown bar that holds the slide in place. So we're going to push this out through the frame, and you can see we've already started from this side. And I'm going to kind of cover the area with my thumb so nothing, again, that detent plate doesn't get out on us. So pull the takedown bar out, and we're going to kind of just set it aside. Remove your thumb, and see if we can show it to you with the tweezers. Down here is our little square detent plate. Flip it around. So detent plate is down here, kind of between, this is part of the slide, these are both, this is all the front slide insert, and it's kind of buried down here. It's a T-shaped block. So I'll kind of reach out the tweezers and pull it out and show it to you. So on this particular gun, the spring has kind of stayed in the T-shaped block. That's not super common. The factory uses, I don't know if you can see it, some of these have more grease on them than others. Normally the spring is going to come out of the block. So again, be careful and kind of, I guess, take note of how the block is installed when you disassemble it. So set the spring and the T-shaped block aside, and we're gonna remove the front slide insert. There's 2 pins holding it in place. There's a solid pin and a roll pin. To remove these pins, we're gonna use an 1/8 inch punch. We recommend using, these are the punches we're gonna use here on the right. They are roll pin punches. If you're not familiar with roll pin punches, they have a small kind of nipple or a nub at the top. And the idea is that this nub kind of centers itself in the roll pin and prevents our punch from walking left and right and marring up the frame. A standard punch is going to look like this guy with just a flat face on it. So side by side, you can kind of see the difference between them. So we are going to use roll pin punches for all of the pins on this frame and recommend that you do the same. Also, this is just a block that we made here out of Delrin. You can use a roll of tape or a stack of 2x4s, anything that can support your polymer frame without marring it or scratching it up, because we're just going to drive these 4 pins, 2 in the back, 2 in the front, through the frame and out. We're going to start with our front pin here, again 1/8 inch roll pin punch. Remove the front pin. Front roll pin. I'm going to go ahead and kind of leave these in our block just so we don't lose them. And this second pin is a solid pin. You don't really need to punch it. Sometimes you can just kind of actually push it out by hand. This one will need to be punched. Sometimes you can just slide them out by hand though. Kind of see how easy that came out. So yeah, pull that guy out, put him in the same block. And now we can remove our front slide insert. Again, another thing to kind of be cautious about is this J-shaped spring. It did come apart on ours. Likes to come out of the slide insert, or I'm sorry, the frame insert. We'll put it back in real quick so you can see how it goes. It should hook underneath the slide release and into this little pocket. Oopsie. Under the slide release, yeah, so it should go under the slide release and into this mating pocket on the slide insert. I'm going to kind of cover it with my thumb and kind of show you how it works. Oh, there you go. It keeps kind of coming out, but maybe you get the idea. So that's where your, I believe it's called the slide release spring, should go. Kind of hangs out in there. So again, let's set this whole assembly aside, and we're getting down to the trigger at this point. So all that's left now is the trigger bar and the striker, I guess the striker block in the back. So for this one, we're going to use a 3/32 punch, again, roll pin punch, to remove these 2 screws in the back of the, or 2 pins in the back of the frame. They are, again, smaller diameter, so using a 3/32 punch, they don't quite need as much force. I'll just put them all in the same block. And last pin is over here. Kind of snuck down on us. So we've got all 4 pins removed at this point, the 2 in the back, 2 in the front, and we can slide our trigger bar and the whole striker assembly out. So striker disconnector, everything's in the back. Removes as one piece. Go ahead and set the frame kind of off to the side. We're not going to need that. We're just going to replace our trigger. To do that, remove it's a 3mm roll pin, a 3mm solid pin that goes straight through the trigger. Just push it out. You can I'm using the 3/32 punch on this one. Let me put it down here. And retain the pin, the solid pin that you removed from the trigger. Set the trigger aside. And we're going to install our Theta flat trigger. Put that to the side. So trigger bar into the back side of the trigger, and kind of push our solid pin into place. Again, you can kind of see we're doing this all by hand. It's a tight fit. It's maybe a little tighter than I would call a slip fit, but you shouldn't need a punch, and you're not staking anything in place. It's designed to pivot and rotate on that pin, but you shouldn't have, the pin shouldn't just drop out. It's in place, but but you can pivot. So that's, I guess, in words, kind of the fit you're going for. So this whole assembly is going to go back into your frame. So drop the trigger down in the trigger guard, and we will slide our striker block back into the back of the frame and start reinstalling our roll pins. Let's go the same order that we took them out. So we're going to put our 2 smaller roll pins in the back. They're the same length, so you can use either pin in either hole. We'll kind of start them by hand. And so we'll bring them down. I maybe brought them down like 1/8 of an inch, proud of the frame. And this is where our handy dandy roll pin punches come into play. So the nub is going to locate itself in the center of the roll pin. And just drive them both back into place in the frame. So it should be just under sub flush on both sides. Next, we're going to reinstall the front frame insert and the slide release. Again, make sure the J-shaped spring is retained in the slide or in the frame insert. Slide the whole assembly into the frame, and unlike the back where these 2 pins can go in either order, we found it easier to install your solid pin first, and specifically from the right side. So the J-shaped spring is going to grab into the groove on the pin, but if we start it through the right side of the frame and kind of use one finger to get the trigger into position and your other finger to slide the pin through, we can get the trigger aligned with the frame insert and then finish pushing our pin through, and it's going to grab the bottom arm of our little J-shaped spring. So see if we can, there, so you can kind of feel it click into place, and it'll be flush on both sides. So that's actually the pin that secures our trigger into place. And at this point, the trigger still is not going to be ready to fire. There's nothing pushing on the trigger bar. So trigger should be back like it's shown, and we're going to put in our next roll pin. This is our largest roll pin. Just drive it through. Once you're down, that's pretty close. Once you're down maybe 1/8 inch, you can leave a little more than that. Grab your roll pin punch. And bring it into position. Now we're back to that little detent block, the T-shaped detent block and spring. The spring goes down and the detent block is shaped like a T. It's only going to go back into your slide or frame insert one way. We'll do it with the tweezers. Get my fingers out of the way. So there's our little T block. You can kind of see it. We're going to drop it straight down into the channel with the spring on the bottom, into the channel in our frame insert. So T block in place. If you want, you can kind of depress it and make sure it's moving freely. That's what's going to press up on our the slide plate, or the slide retention plate. The last thing to do here, we're almost done, is to put the slide plate back in. The slide plate is directional. The chamfer, or the angle on the slide plate, needs to be facing the muzzle of the firearm. So when it's installed, the chamfer on the slide plate is going to be facing the muzzle. So go ahead and, just like we took it out, slide, I like to kind of start it and then use the slide plate itself to depress that T block and just slide it into place, kind of like that. And the installation of the trigger is now complete. Don't try to put the slide back on the frame with the trigger forward. Make sure the trigger itself is back, like that. So reinstall your slide, and you should see the trigger reset just like it has. And you can check, you dry fire it, of course, check function, so reset. There you go. You've installed the trigger. Next thing to do, right? Take it to the range and have fun. So if you have any questions or feedback or comments or need any other help or information, just let us know. We are here to help, email, phone calls. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube if you need us. Just reach out to us and let us know how we can help you. Thanks for watching and safe shooting.